The vast Galactic Council chamber stretched impossibly high, its curved walls rising hundreds of meters before disappearing into a simulated starfield ceiling. Tier upon tier of alien delegates filled the chamber, representatives from over 3,000 worlds, some humanoid, others defying description. The air hummed with translation devices as thousands of languages merged into a background murmur. In the center of this overwhelming display of interstellar unity stood a single human, Ambassador Marcus. Reed stood alone on the judgment platform, a circular dais illuminated by harsh white light. At 63, his weathered face and steel-gray hair reflected decades of diplomatic service, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. The United Earth government had selected him for his unflappable demeanor. Today, that composure would be tested. The Council recognizes High Counselor Vexillar of the Dominion Worlds, announced an automated voice that echoed throughout the chamber. A tall, insectoid figure rose from the highest tier. Vexillar's chitinous exoskeleton gleamed iridescent blue under the chamber lights. His compound eyes, each the size of a human fist, focused on the solitary human below. Ambassador Reed, Vexillar's voice boomed through translation systems. You stand before the highest authority in civilized space. For 8 standard cycles, humanity has enjoyed observer status within our galactic community. Today, that relationship changes. The chamber fell silent. Even the background hum of translation devices seemed to fade. The Oversight Committee has completed its evaluation of Earth's technological development, Vexillar continued. We have detected quantum manipulation algorithms in your latest communication satellites that violate Section 7 of the Technology Development Protocols. Reed maintained perfect stillness, only the slight narrowing of his eyes betraying any reaction. Furthermore, Vexillar's mandibles clicked with what might have been satisfaction. Your recent expansion to the Proxima Centauri system occurred without proper council authorization. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. Reed's neural implant pulsed once, confirmation that Earth had received the council's transmission. He closed his eyes briefly, accessing the secure diplomatic channel. Admiral Olivia Torres's message was brief. Operation Firebreak authorized. Proceed. The Council has deliberated on the Terran question, Vexillar announced. Voice amplified throughout the chamber. For the crime of unauthorized technological advancement, Earth's colonies will be immediately quarantined. All off-world human settlements will be evacuated and placed under Council stewardship. The chamber erupted in murmurs as Vexillar continued. Furthermore, to ensure compliance, a peacekeeping fleet will establish orbit around Earth. All quantum communication relays will be disabled. You can't possibly, Reed began. The decision is final, Vexillar interrupted, compound eyes gleaming. The Council has been lenient with humanity for too long. Your species has repeatedly violated technological advancement protocols. The containment process begins immediately. Reed smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. High Counselor, the United Earth government wishes me to convey a message. He drew himself taller, voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent chamber. Humanity rejects your judgment. We did not join this council to be subjugated. We came as equals. Ambassador, you misunderstand your position, Vexillar responded, mandibles clicking with irritation. Earth has no standing to reject. Earth has every standing, Reed interrupted, pulling a small device from his pocket. The Council has forgotten something fundamental about humans. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Across the chamber, alarms began to sound. The massive security barriers designed to protect the Council suddenly locked in place, sealing everyone inside. What is the meaning of this? Vexillar demanded as panicked voices filled the chamber. 3 days ago, anticipating your decision, we positioned stealth platforms throughout Council space. Reed explained calmly. Right now, every homeworld represented in this chamber has human weapons in orbit. Not colony worlds. Homeworlds. The holographic displays shifted, showing real-time footage of previously invisible human warships decloaking above major Council worlds. The chamber descended into chaos. This is an act of war, Vexillar shrieked. No, Reed corrected. This is a response to your act of war. You sought to imprison an entire species. Did you truly believe we would simply accept that fate? As Council security forces rushed toward him, Reed activated his emergency transport beacon. Before disappearing in a flash of quantum displacement, his final words echoed through the chamber. The Council went too far. Humanity now declares war, a war without mercy, and unlike you, we came prepared to win it. 2 hours later, Reed materialized aboard the UES Defiant, Earth's prototype stealth carrier hiding in the shadow of the Council's orbital defense network. Captain Eleanor Hayes waited at the transport pad, her dark features set in a grim expression. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador," she said, extending a hand. "I trust the Council received our message?" "They received it," Reed confirmed, gratefully accepting a hydration pack from a waiting attendant. "Whether they'll heed it remains to be seen." Hayes led him through the ship's corridors toward the command center. "The stealth net is fully deployed. All Council homeworlds are targeted and our colonial defense systems are activated. Earth is ready, and the evacuation? Proceeding according to protocol. Civilian vessels were departing before you even entered the Council chamber." The Defiance command center buzzed with controlled activity as officers monitored incoming data streams. The central holographic display showed thousands of human ships emerging from hiding places throughout Council space, a fleet far larger than the Council believed humanity possessed, Admiral. Torres appeared on the main screen, her silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight bun, her brown eyes sharp with focus. "Ambassador, welcome back. Status report?" "The Council rejected diplomacy," Reed replied. "They chose subjugation instead." Torres nodded as if this merely confirmed what she already knew. "Then we proceed to Phase 2. Captain Hayes, move your battle group to Position Alpha and prepare for the Council's response. They'll test our resolve first." "What about the neutral species?" Hayes asked. "The ones who abstained from the vote?" "We've already made contact through back channels," Torres replied. "Many were victims of the Council's stewardship in the past. They won't interfere." Reed settled into a chair, suddenly feeling the weight of his 63 years. "How long have we been planning for this day, Olivia?" "Since the first Council representatives arrived on Earth 8 years ago," Torres answered. "When they explained their technology development protocols, every alarm bell in military intelligence started ringing. No advanced civilization would voluntarily restrict another's growth unless they feared being overtaken. On the tactical display, Council defensive systems were activating across multiple sectors. The first response fleet was already assembling at Nexus Station, the massive military installation at the heart of Council territory. "They're mobilizing faster than predicted," noted Hayes. "But exactly where we predicted," Torres countered. "The Council has used the same military doctrine for over 3 centuries. Their responses are predictable." Reed studied the tactical display where thousands of human vessels were moving into predetermined positions. "How did we hide all this? The Council's surveillance network is supposed to be unbeatable." Torres allowed herself a tight smile. "Remember those violation protocols they accused us of? Quantum manipulation algorithms in our satellites? They detected the decoys we wanted them to find. Our actual technology is generations beyond what they've seen. And now?" Reed asked. "Now we demonstrate that humanity will not be contained," Torres replied, her voice hardening. "The Council built its authority on the assumption that they could control technological development across the galaxy. We're about to shatter that assumption." A signal chimed from the communication station. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his console. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Nexus Station." "It's High Counselor Vexlar." "Put him through," Torres ordered. Vexlar's insectoid features appeared on the screen, compound eyes glittering with barely contained rage. "Admiral Torres, your ambassador has committed an unconscionable act of aggression against the Council. Withdraw your forces immediately or we will be forced to take decisive action." Torres regarded him calmly. "High Counselor, humanity spent centuries confined to our home planet dreaming of the stars. When we finally reached them, you arrived with your rules and restrictions. You demanded compliance while offering nothing in return. Today, that arrangement ends. You cannot hope to stand against the combined might of the Council," Vexlar warned. "We don't intend to stand against it," Torres replied. "We intend to break it. You have 6 hours to withdraw all Council forces from human territory and acknowledge our independence from Council authority. After that, we will demonstrate exactly how much we've been hiding from your oversight committees." She terminated the transmission before Vexlar could respond. 6 hours, Reed mused. "Do you think they'll negotiate?" Torres shook her head. "No, they can't. The moment they concede to one species, others will demand the same freedom. The Council must maintain the illusion of absolute control. The massive viewport on Nexus Station's command deck offered a breathtaking view of the assembled Council armada. 5,000 warships hovered in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of twin suns. Fleet Admiral Jaxtil, the most decorated Draxian commander in Council history, stood with his forearms clasped behind his back, scaled skin reflecting the blue glow of tactical displays. "The largest fleet assembled in 3 centuries," commented Sub-Commander Renthak, his voice carrying a note of pride. "The humans cannot possibly stand against such might." Jaxtil's vertical pupils narrowed as he studied the display. "Pride precedes failure, Sub-Commander. We know too little about human military capability. They have 73 colonies and a fleet of perhaps 300 ships," Renthak replied dismissively. "Our intelligence reports—" The station shuddered violently, cutting off Renthak's words. Emergency lights flashed as gravity fluctuated momentarily before stabilizing. Klaxons wailed throughout the command deck. "Report," Jaxtil demanded, moving swiftly to the central tactical station. "Unknown weapon signature," his second-in-command replied, frantically working the controls. "It appears to be. It's impossible. The humans have somehow weaponized dark energy." On the tactical display, a third of the assembled fleet was simply gone. Not destroyed, but vanished completely from real space. Before anyone could process this loss, Communications Officer Lithamar received an incoming transmission. "Admiral, it's from the human flagship Retribution." The display shifted to show the face of Admiral Olivia Torres, her expression unnervingly calm. "Admiral Jaxtil, that was a demonstration of the Void Lance. The ships we removed have been displaced to a pocket dimension. They are unharmed, but unable to return without our assistance." Jaxtil's facial spines flared in anger.
"This is barbaric."
"Return my fleet immediately. The Council has 24 hours to rescind all sanctions against Earth and acknowledge humanity's sovereign right to self-determination," Torres continued as if he hadn't spoken. "We're transmitting coordinates for peace negotiations." "You cannot possibly believe we would negotiate after this act of aggression," Jaxtil snarled. Torres's expression hardened. "This isn't aggression, Admiral. It's restraint. We could have displaced your entire fleet, or worse, your Council homeworlds. Consider carefully what happens when humanity stops showing restraint." The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence on the command deck. Lieutenant Commander David Morgan, the sole human liaison officer assigned to Nexus Station, cleared his throat from his position near the communications array. All eyes turned to him. "If I may speak freely, Admiral," Morgan said, his voice steady despite the hostile stares, "you fundamentally misunderstand what you're dealing with. The Council has always viewed humanity as technologically primitive, because we've hidden our true capabilities." "Why?" Jaxtil demanded, stalking toward the human. "Why this deception?" "Because every species that showed their full technological hand was immediately restricted by Council mandate," Morgan explained. "We played weak while building strength. The Void Lance, it's one of our older weapon systems." A chill spread through the command center as Morgan continued. "The Council made 3 critical mistakes: assuming humans were compliant, assuming we were forthcoming, and assuming we weren't prepared for betrayal. Earth has been ready for this war since the day we joined the Council." Jaxtil stared at the tactical display, watching as human vessels began systematic operations throughout Council space. "What does your species want?" Morgan's answer was simple: recognition that humanity cannot and will not be controlled. The Council tried to cage us. Now you'll learn what happens when you corner a species that evolved as apex predators. "Take him to the detention level," Jaxtil ordered, gesturing toward Morgan. "He may provide valuable intelligence." As 2 security officers approached, Morgan smiled thinly. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Admiral." He tapped his wrist communicator once. Checkmate protocol activated. Throughout Nexus Station, previously dormant systems suddenly activated. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, separating the command staff from security forces. Communications arrays went offline. "What have you done?" Jaxtil demanded. "Insurance," Morgan replied calmly. "Every human assigned to Council facilities carried dormant tech. You've had sleeper systems in your infrastructure for years." On the main view screen, the tactical display shifted to show a new reality: human stealth platforms decloaking near critical Council installations throughout the sector. The command staff watched in horror as precision strikes disabled weapon systems and propulsion arrays on the remaining Council vessels. "We don't want to destroy your ships or kill your people," Morgan explained. "This isn't about annihilation. It's about freedom from Council control." "The Council has stood for 10,000 years, Jaxatil said, mandibles clicking in agitation. "We maintain order across thousands of worlds. Without us, the galaxy would descend into chaos." Morgan shook his head. "That's the story you tell yourselves. The reality? You've stifled innovation, controlled development, and suppressed any species that might challenge your authority." Across the sector, reports flooded in of similar scenarios playing out on Council worlds. Human stealth technology had allowed them to position forces throughout Council space, ready to activate on command. "This is Commander Morgan," he said, activating the station-wide communication system. "All Council personnel, remain calm and stay in your current locations. This station is now under temporary human control. No harm will come to those who cooperate." Turning to Jaxtil, Morgan's expression softened slightly. "I've served on this station for 3 years, Admiral. I respect your leadership and your sense of duty. That's why I'm hoping you'll help prevent unnecessary casualties." "By surrendering?" Jaxtil asked incredulously. "By acknowledging reality," Morgan corrected. "The war is already over. It ended the moment the Council threatened to quarantine Earth. All that remains is to determine how painful the transition will be." On a secondary display, footage showed human transports arriving at Council colonies across the sector, but instead of weapons they carried supplies and humanitarian aid. "What is this?" Renthak asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Phase 2, Morgan explained. "Many Council worlds have suffered under resource restrictions for centuries. We're offering partnership instead of subjugation." The strategic brilliance began to dawn on Jaxtil. "You're turning our own people against us," Morgan shrugged. "We're offering them what the Council never did: respect and autonomy. Your empire wasn't built on loyalty, Admiral. It was built on dependency and fear." A priority communication alert sounded from the emergency channel. When Jaxtil authorized it, the holographic form of High Counselor Vexillar appeared, his usually immaculate appearance now disheveled. "Admiral, you must launch all remaining forces against the human homeworld immediately," Vexillar commanded. "Our authority is being challenged across multiple sectors." Jaxtil glanced at Morgan, then back to Vexillar. "High Counselor, our fleet has been neutralized. The humans control this station. I recommend immediate negotiations." "Negotiations?" Vexillar's compound eyes seemed to bulge with rage. "They are barbarians. Savages who outmaneuvered us completely." Jaxtil interrupted, a rare breach of protocol. "Who prepared for years while we dismissed them as primitive. Who now control our core worlds without firing a single lethal shot." Vexillar's hologram flickered as he struggled to maintain composure. "The Council cannot appear weak. We must respond with overwhelming force." "With what forces?" Jaxtil asked quietly. "Look at the tactical display, Counselor. The humans have disabled our fleets across all sectors simultaneously. This was not a battle. It was a strategic checkmate executed with precision." As the reality of their situation settled over the command deck, Sub-Commander Renthak approached Morgan. "How did humanity develop such technology without detection?" "Our monitoring systems are the most sophisticated in the galaxy." Morgan smiled slightly. "We learned deception from our own history. For centuries, Earth nations concealed their true military capabilities from each other. We simply applied those lessons on a galactic scale." The station's communication system chimed again, indicating an incoming transmission from Earth Command. The face of General Thomas Blackwood appeared on screen, his weathered features set in a grim expression. "Commander Morgan, status report." "Nexus Station is secure, General," Morgan replied. "The Council fleet has been neutralized and we're establishing control over key systems." Blackwood nodded. "Similar reports coming in from all sectors. Phase 3 begins in 12 hours. Ensure all non-essential personnel are evacuated before then." As the transmission ended, Jaxtil turned to Morgan. "Phase 3? "The dismantling of the Council's enforcement mechanisms," Morgan explained. "The regulatory bodies, the technology suppression systems, the resource control networks, all of it ends tomorrow." "And what happens to Council worlds?" "To our people?" Renthak asked, voice tight with concern. Morgan's expression softened. "Nothing changes for ordinary citizens. They'll continue their lives, but under governments that answer to them, not to the Council. Many won't even notice the difference. Professor Alara Knox peered through the observation window at the alien delegation, waiting in the sterile conference room. The three representatives, one from each of the Council's founding species, sat rigidly around the table, their body language broadcasting anxiety despite their physiological differences. As Earth's leading xenopsychologist, Alara had been summoned to Fort Olympus, humanity's ultra-classified military headquarters, buried deep within the lunar surface to assess the Council's hastily assembled diplomatic team. They seemed genuinely afraid, she noted to General Thomas Blackwood, who stood beside her with arms crossed over his broad chest. At 65, Blackwood remained imposing, his dark skin contrasting with close-cropped white hair. They should be, Blackwood replied, voice gravelly from decades of command. The Phase 2 deployments have begun. The diplomatic team consisted of representatives from the Council's three founding species, a willowy archon with iridescent skin that shifted colors with her emotions, a heavily armored Krell warrior whose rock-like exoskeleton bore ceremonial scars, and a floating, gelatinous Vox encased in a containment field that allowed it to survive an Earth-normal atmosphere. They expected us to negotiate from weakness, Blackwood continued, tapping a display that showed the current deployment of human forces throughout Council space. Instead, we're 1 week into the conflict, and we've disabled 30% of their military capacity without a single human casualty. That's what concerns me, Alara said, tucking a strand of silver-streaked hair behind her ear. They don't understand why we're holding back. In their collective psychology, mercy is viewed as weakness. Perhaps they need a more convincing demonstration of strength, Blackwood mused. His comm unit chimed. He listened briefly before a rare smile crossed his weathered face. It's time. The Lazarus Protocol is complete. On the massive strategic display dominating the command center wall, thousands of new signatures suddenly appeared throughout Council space. Human vessels emerging from hidden fold space pockets where they had remained dormant for decades. What are they seeing out there? Alara asked, watching as the alien diplomats were shown the same strategic display in their conference room. The Archon representative's skin paled to a sickly white. The truth, Blackwood said grimly, that the 300 ships they knew about were just the visible tip of our military. The hidden fleet has over 7,000 vessels, positioned within striking distance of every major Council world and installation. Inside the conference room, the Krell warrior rose to his full height, massive fists clenched. Impossible, he growled, voice rumbling through the observation speakers. No species could hide such a force. Lieutenant Marisol Reyes, Earth's lead negotiator, remained seated, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the agitated aliens. Please, War Master Dorn, return to your seat. This display of force is merely to illustrate our position. Your position, the Vox representative burbled through its translator, its gelatinous form pulsating rapidly. Your position is one of deception and hostility. Our position, Reyes clarified, is one of self-preservation. For 8 years we watched the Council subjugate other species who displayed technological innovation. We saw how the Elix were forced into protective oversight when they developed quantum tunneling. We witnessed the Terran Confederacy dismantled for creating synthetic intelligence. Earth chose a different path. We hid our true capabilities while preparing for the inevitable day when the Council would try to contain us. She slid a data crystal across the table. These are our terms. They are non-negotiable. You have 6 hours to secure the Council's full acceptance. The Archon representative, Ambassador Lyra, picked up the crystal with trembling fingers. These demands would effectively end the Council's authority over member worlds, she said after reviewing its contents. Why not simply destroy us if that is your intention? Because destruction isn't our goal, Marisol replied. Reform is. The Council has become tyrannical, stifling innovation and independence across the galaxy. Humanity is merely the first species with both the will and capability to challenge that tyranny. Back in the observation room, Alara turned to Blackwood. The Council believes we're bluffing about our willingness to escalate further. Then it's time to show them we're not, Blackwood said, activating his command link. This is General Blackwood. Execute Operation Darkstar. Across Council space, precisely targeted quantum disruptions began shutting down interstellar travel networks. Within hours, every Council world would be isolated, cut off from the unified empire they had relied upon for millennia. "General," a communications officer called from her station, "we're receiving priority transmissions from 17 systems. Non-council worlds requesting alliance with Earth. The dominoes are falling faster than predicted," Blackwood noted. Turning to Alara, "Your assessment?" Alara studied the diplomatic feed, watching the council representatives' reactions to real-time updates of their collapsing power structure. They're experiencing cognitive dissonance. Their entire worldview was built on council supremacy. That reality is unraveling before their eyes. In the conference room, Ambassador Lyra's skin had shifted to a deep blue, a sign of desperation in Archon emotional displays. "How did you develop such technology without detection?" "Our monitoring systems are the most advanced in the galaxy." Marisol smiled slightly. "Perhaps not as advanced as you believed. Or perhaps humans are simply better at hiding things. For centuries, our nations concealed their true military capabilities from each other. We applied those lessons on a galactic scale." The Krell warrior, War Master Dorn, leaned forward, his gravelly voice low. "These terms demand the complete restructuring of galactic governance. The High Council will never agree." "Then the High Council will fall," Marisol replied simply. "Already 27 member species have declared independence. Your authority is crumbling hour by hour." On the command center's main display, Admiral Olivia Torres appeared, transmitting from the flagship Retribution. "General, Phase 3 is proceeding ahead of schedule. Council resistance has been minimal." "Casualties?" Blackwood asked. "Remarkably low," Torres reported. "Most Council forces are standing down rather than engaging. They recognize the technological disparity." Torres's image was replaced by a strategic display showing the progress of human forces across Council space. Key installations were being secured, communication networks reconfigured, and defense systems neutralized. "We should join the negotiations," Blackwood said to Alara. "Your expertise in xenopsychology might be valuable." Inside the conference room, the atmosphere tensed as Blackwood and Alara entered. The Vox representative's containment field rippled with agitation. "General Blackwood," Ambassador Lyra acknowledged. "The architect of humanity's military strategy, I presume?" "One of many," Blackwood corrected, taking a seat beside Marisol. "Humanity's response was the work of thousands of strategists over many years. We hoped we would never need to implement these plans. Yet, you prepared for war while claiming to seek peace," the Vox representative pointed out. "We prepared for the Council's predictable response to our growth," Blackwood countered. "Your history made your intentions clear. Any species that approaches technological parity with the founding races is contained, restricted, or dismantled. We simply ensured we would not share that fate." "The Council maintains order," War Master Dorn insisted, thumping his armored chest. "Without our governance, the galaxy would descend into chaos." Ilara spoke for the first time. "That's the narrative the Council has promoted for millennia. But governance doesn't require subjugation. Control doesn't require suppression of growth." She activated a holographic display showing historical data. "I've studied Council interventions over the past 1,000 years. 87 species have been placed under protective oversight after displaying technological innovation. Of those, 23 eventually collapsed entirely. That's not governance, it's systematic oppression." The Council representatives exchanged uneasy glances. "What happens now?" Ambassador Lyra asked finally, her skin shifting to a muted green, a sign of reluctant acceptance. Marisol nodded to Blackwood, who activated another display showing a new organizational structure. "The Galactic Concordat, a cooperative alliance rather than a governing hierarchy. Technology development protocols replaced with ethical guidelines developed by consensus. Military forces controlled by individual worlds rather than a central authority." "And the Council's role in this new order?" the Vox representative asked. "The founding species would retain their status as senior members," Marisol explained. "Their experience and wisdom would be valued, but not their control." A communication alert sounded. The central display showed a human fleet surrounding the Council homeworld of Arcturus Prime, seat of the High Council itself. "Your time is running out," Blackwood said quietly. "Accept these terms or watch the Council's authority dissolve completely." Ambassador Lyra's skin rippled through several colors before settling on a resolute purple. We will transmit your terms to the High Council with our recommendation for acceptance. As the council representatives departed to communicate with their superiors, Ilara remained behind with Blackwood and Marisol. Will they comply? Marisol asked. Grand Arbiter Zolkovan strode through the emergency council session, his ceremonial robes trailing behind him. The temporary chamber, hastily established in the backup facility on Rigel Prime after the quarantine of the main council world, was a shadow of its former grandeur. Gone were the thousands of observer species. Only the 17 members of the ruling conclave remained. The inner circle of galactic governance, Kavan's translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns indicating extreme stress as he took his position at the central podium. As the highest judicial authority in council space, he had called this unprecedented closed meeting. This conflict has reached a critical juncture, Cavan announced, his resonant voice carrying through the chamber without amplification. 3 weeks of human military operations have demonstrated capabilities that violate every understanding we had of their technological development. Holographic displays around the chamber showed the current situation. Human forces in control of key strategic points throughout council space. Communication networks reconfigured, defense systems neutralized, and most concerning, dozens of formerly loyal council worlds declaring independence. The humans have offered terms, Cavan continued, gesturing to the data crystals distributed before each representative. I have reviewed them, and while severe, they may represent our only path forward. Councillor Mevleth of the Thraxi Confederation slammed a clawed appendage onto the table. Capitulation is unacceptable. The reptilian diplomat's scales flushed a deep crimson with anger. Yes, they have surprised us, but our combined forces still outnumber theirs. Numbers mean nothing against their technology, countered Councillor Jor of the Alani Union, their 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of deep concern. They have systematically disabled our fleets without destruction. Our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses. Perhaps if we offered limited concessions, suggested Councillor Pel Vorex of the Cygnus Authority, the avian diplomat's feathered crest flattening in submission, allow them greater technological freedom while maintaining council oversight. Appeasement is not, Mevelith began but fell silent as the chamber doors slid open unexpectedly. All heads turned as Director Nathaniel Drake entered unannounced. Tall and lean, with sharp features and calculating eyes, Earth's intelligence director moved with casual confidence through the supposedly secure council chamber. His presence here, in this emergency session on a distant world, was both shocking and a powerful demonstration of human infiltration capabilities. Director Drake, Cavan acknowledged, mandibles twitching with suppressed anger. Your presence here is irregular. So is this war, Drake replied, moving to the center of the chamber. But I'm here to offer clarity. Your intelligence reports tell you that humanity is stretched thin, that our resources must be nearing depletion. This is dangerously incorrect, Drake. Activated a holographic display showing massive construction, facilities hidden in the Oort cloud of Sol, systems sprawling shipyards and manufacturing, centers that had been completely invisible to council observation for decades. What you're witnessing is our tertiary production facility, Drake explained as the council representatives stared in disbelief. For every ship you've encountered, we can produce 3 more within a standard month. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. But more importantly, Drake continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. 7 other species within the council have secretly allied with humanity. The chamber erupted in chaos as accusations flew between representatives. Councilors turned to each other with suspicion. Centuries-old alliances suddenly questioned. Silence, Cavan commanded, his bioluminescence flaring bright with authority. When order was restored, he turned to Drake. What proof do you offer of these claims? Councillor Mevleth, Drake said, turning to the Thraxi representative. Perhaps you should explain why your homeworld's orbital defenses were deactivated 3 days ago by your own command codes. The chamber went deathly quiet as all eyes turned to Mevleth. The reptilian diplomat's scales shifted from crimson to a muted gray, a sign of resignation among his species. The Thraxi were the first to recognize the council's corruption, Mevleth admitted, rising to stand beside Drake. We are not the only ones. The Alani, the Vega Cooperative, the Tau Confederation, all have secretly supported human resistance. This is treason, shouted the Krell representative Warmaster Gorvax, his rock-like fist cracking the table as he slammed it down. No, Mevleth responded, standing tall despite the hostile stares. This is revolution. The Council was founded to unite species, not subjugate them. It has forgotten its purpose. As the Council descended into furious debate, Drake quietly approached Kavan. You have 12 hours to accept our terms, he said quietly. After that, we initiate Phase 3. I suggest you don't discover what that entails. The message was clear. The monolithic council was fracturing from within, and humanity had orchestrated not just a war, but a galaxy-wide rebellion against an order that had stood for 10,000 years. When Drake departed, the chamber remained divided between those advocating surrender and those demanding continued resistance. Kavan, sensing the fracturing of the once unified council, called for a brief recess. In a private chamber adjoining the main hall, Kavan met with the representatives of the council's 5 most powerful factions. The atmosphere was tense, centuries of political maneuvering giving way to brutal honesty in the face of existential threat. We must face reality, Kavan began. The humans have outmaneuvered us completely. Our military is neutralized, our communications compromised, and now our unity shattered. The terms they offer would end the council as we know it, protested Gorvax, the Krell representative. A cooperative alliance instead of centralized authority? Technology development free from oversight? This would undo millennia of careful control. Perhaps that control was our mistake, suggested Jor of the Alani, their voice soft but firm. We sought stability through suppression rather than cooperation. We feared innovation instead of embracing it. The Alani would say that, Gorvax growled. You've secretly aided the humans. Because we remembered what it means to be subjugated, Jor replied. Before joining the council, our world was under Krell occupation. We recognize oppression when we see it. As accusations continued to fly, Kavan's attention was drawn to an alert on his private communication device. What he saw caused his bioluminescence to pulse with alarm. This discussion is academic, he announced, interrupting the argument. The decision may no longer be ours to make. He activated the chamber's main display, showing real-time footage from across council space. On world after world, populations were rising up against council authority. Not violent rebellions, but organized political movements demanding acceptance of the human terms. This is coordinated, Pelvorix observed, feathered crest rising in surprise. Of course it is, Mevleth replied. For centuries, the council has maintained control through the illusion of benevolent authority. Once that illusion cracks, once species see that the council can be challenged, the entire system becomes vulnerable. On the display, representatives from dozens of worlds were announcing their support for the Galactic Concordat, the new organizational structure proposed by humanity. How long has this been planned? Kavan asked Mevleth directly. The Thraxi diplomat's scales rippled with what might have been satisfaction. 5 years. Since the humans first approached us with evidence of council suppression of the Terran Confederacy, they showed us records proving the council had deliberately sabotaged Terran synthetic intelligence research because it threatened to surpass the founding species' technology. The Terrans were developing dangerous AI, Gorvax protested. The Terrans were developing AI that would have revolutionized medicine across the galaxy, Mevleth corrected, but it would have made council medical technology obsolete, threatening the founding species' economic control. As the display continued showing world after world declaring support for the new order, the reality of their situation became impossible to ignore. We must vote, Kavan announced finally. The full council will reconvene in 1 hour to determine our response to the human terms. When the council reassembled, the chamber was notably less crowded. 4 representatives had simply disappeared during the recess, presumably defecting to the human-led alliance. Before we vote, Kavan announced, I have received communication from High Counselor Vexillar. The chamber murmured in surprise. Vexillar had not been seen since his attempted activation of the emergency fleet 3 days earlier. Vexillar's image appeared on the central display, his once commanding presence diminished. He appeared to be transmitting from a human vessel. Members of the council, Vexillar began, his voice lacking its usual authoritative resonance. I have witnessed the full extent of human capability. Their technology exceeds our understanding in ways I cannot adequately describe. But more concerning is the extent of their preparation. They have been ready for this conflict since their first contact with the Council. He paused, compound eyes dimming slightly. I have also been shown evidence of Council actions that contradict our stated principles. Suppression of technological development not for security, but for control. Manipulation of member species for the biz. I recommend the Council D. The Great Hall of Concord gleamed under the light of 1,000 stars visible through its transparent dome. Constructed in Earth's orbital diplomatic station in just 6 weeks, the hall represented a stark departure from the imposing council chambers it replaced. Instead of rising tiers designed to intimidate, a circular arrangement placed all representatives on equal footing. The architecture itself made a statement. This would be a gathering of equals. Representatives from over 200 species filled the hall. Former council members and previously unaffiliated civilizations alike, all gathered for the signing of the Galactic Concordat. The atmosphere hummed with anticipation, translation devices handling the hundreds of languages being spoken in excited murmurs. Admiral Olivia Torres, her dress uniform bearing the newly created insignia of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, stood at the central podium. Behind her, the remaining leaders of the former council waited, no longer wearing the ornate robes that had once symbolized their absolute authority, but simpler attire befitting representatives rather than rulers. 3 months ago, Torres began, her voice carrying clearly throughout the hall. The Galactic Council attempted to subjugate humanity. They sought to quarantine our world, restrict our development, and curtail our expansion among the stars. The hall fell silent as she continued. Today, we gather not to celebrate victory, but to ensure such abuses of power never happen again. Humanity did not want this war. We prepared for it because history taught us that freedom must sometimes be defended at terrible cost. But unlike the council we opposed, we do not seek to rule. She gestured to the document displayed holographically above the central table, the Galactic Concordat, with its terms visible to all. This agreement represents a fundamental shift in how our civilizations interact. No longer will technological development be restricted for the benefit of a few. No longer will worlds be subjugated under the guise of protection. Instead, we establish a true alliance, one where each species determines its own path while agreeing to basic principles of non-aggression and cooperation. Former High Counselor Vexlar approached the podium when Torres indicated. The insectoid diplomat's once commanding presence was subdued, but there was a dignity in his bearing that suggested acceptance rather than defeat. I acknowledge the failures of the system I helped maintain, Vexlar said. His voice transmitted through translation devices across the hall. The council began with noble intentions, to prevent interstellar conflicts, to provide stability after the sundering wars that nearly destroyed our ancestors. But over millennia it became what it was formed to prevent, a tyranny that stifled growth and diversity in the name of stability. Murmurs spread through the hall as many species heard for the first time a council leader acknowledge the oppressive nature of the regime they had maintained. The humans exposed, not just our military vulnerability, Vexlar continued, but the fundamental flaws in our approach to governance. For that, despite the humiliation of defeat, I find myself grateful. The Concordat's terms scrolled on displays throughout the hall. Independence guaranteed for all member worlds. Technological development unrestricted except for weapons of mass destruction. A defensive alliance rather than a governing body. Unanimous consent required for any intervention in member worlds' affairs. The first signatures will be from the former council leadership and the human representatives, Torres announced, followed by all worlds wishing to join the Concordat. As the signing ceremony proceeded, Ambassador Marcus Reed, the diplomat whose defiance had sparked the conflict, stood with Professor Alara Knox and General Blackwood in a private observation room overlooking the hall. Did we go too far? Alara asked quietly, watching as species after species formalized their acceptance of the new galactic order. The technology we revealed, the lives disrupted. The alternative was worse, Blackwood responded, his weathered face solemn. Council intelligence had already determined humanity was too unpredictable to be allowed free development. Their containment plan would have eventually led to our extinction. Reed shook his head, gray hair catching the light from the stars visible through the viewport. What troubles me is how easily we won. Our preparations were thorough, yes, but the speed of the Council's collapse suggests deeper rot than even we suspected. It wasn't just our military advantage, Ilara noted, leaning against the observation window. It was that dozens of species were already primed for rebellion. They just needed someone to strike the first blow. Below, the signing continued as delegation after delegation approached the central table. Each representative placed their hand, appendage, or sensory organ on the authentication panel, formalizing their world's acceptance of the Concordat. I worry about what comes next, Reed admitted. Humanity has shown itself to be the most technologically advanced species in known space. There will be fear, resentment. That's why we're implementing the knowledge-sharing protocols immediately, Blackwood replied. The technology we've kept hidden will be available to all Concordat members, with appropriate ethical safeguards. And the defense network? Ilara asked. Transferred to joint control within the month, Blackwood confirmed. No single species, including humans, will have unilateral military authority. The observation room door slid open, and Director Nathaniel Drake entered, his usually inscrutable expression showing signs of fatigue after months of coordinating the intelligence aspects of the conflict. The last Council holdouts have signaled their intention to join, Drake reported. The Krell Hegemony and the Vox Collective have both requested admission to the Concordat. That's surprising, Reed commented. The Krell were the most vehemently opposed to our terms. They're pragmatists beneath their warrior culture, Drake replied with a slight smile. And the demonstration of our fold space technology last week convinced them that resistance was suboptimal. So it's done, Ilara said softly. The Council that stood for 10,000 years has fallen, replaced by the Concordat in just 3 months. Not fallen, Reed corrected. Transformed. Many of the same individuals remain in positions of influence. The difference is the system within which they now operate. Below, as the formal ceremony concluded, the Great Hall erupted in what could only be described as celebration. Despite the vast physiological differences between the assembled species, the atmosphere of relief and possibility was universal. There's something you should see, Drake said, activating a private display visible only to the 4 humans. We've completed decryption of the final Council archive files. The holographic projection showed Council discussions dating back centuries, revealing the systematic suppression of dozens of promising civilizations, some completely destroyed when they resisted Council authority. We weren't the first they tried to contain, Reed realized, scrolling through the damning evidence. Just the first who successfully fought back. The Terran Confederacy came close, Drake noted. Their synthetic intelligence program nearly succeeded in breaking Council information control. That's why they were made an example. The official record claims the Terrans destroyed themselves through uncontrolled AI development, Ilara said, her voice tight with anger. The official record was a fabrication, Drake confirmed. Council Special Forces deployed quantum disruption weapons that made it appear as if Terran AI had malfunctioned. 50 billion lives lost to maintain Council supremacy. Admiral Torres joined them in the observation room, her face solemn as she reviewed the evidence. Then we didn't go too far, she said firmly. We went exactly as far as necessary. Not for revenge, but for justice. For those who couldn't defend themselves. The public can never know the full extent of Council atrocities, Reed cautioned. If these archives were released, the fragile peace we've established would collapse into chaos. Dozens of species would demand retribution. Agreed, Torres said after a moment's consideration. These records will be sealed, accessible only to the Concordat Security Council, with appropriate ethical oversight. And the former Council leaders? Ilara asked. They're guilty of genocide on an unimaginable scale. They will help build the system that prevents such atrocities from happening again, Torres replied. Justice sometimes requires looking forward, not back. As the celebration in the Great Hall continued, plans were already being implemented across former Council space. Human stealth platforms were being reconfigured as joint defense installations. Technology previously hidden by Earth was being shared with trusted partners. Educational exchanges were being established between formerly isolated worlds. We should join the reception, Torres suggested. Our absence would be noted. As they prepared to leave the observation room, Reed paused at the viewport, looking out at Earth gleaming blue and white against the blackness of space. 8 years ago, when the Council first contacted us, they believed they were incorporating another primitive species into their controlled expansion program. He reflected, they had no idea we would be the catalyst for the greatest transformation in galactic history. That's the thing about humans, Blackwood said with a rare smile. We've always been better at adaptation than compliance. The Council tried to fit us into their existing power structure. They should have recognized that we would inevitably change that structure instead.